It was just a hoodie. A soft, worn-out, gray hoodie. But in the streets of South Ridgeview, a predominantly white neighborhood nestled on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, a black teenager wearing that hoodie became something more than a kid walking home. He became a possible threat. 19-year-old Darnell Whitaker had just finished his closing shift at Big Floyd's Barbecue Shack, a small, greasy diner along the I-85. He was tired. Sweat still clung to his shirt beneath the hoodie. His phone was at 8%, and his only thought was getting home to his mom, who waited for him in their apartment in Willow Pine Estates, a public housing complex known more for poverty than for peace. But he never made it home. That night, as he walked down East Briarwood Avenue, a street lined with hedge-trimmed yards, porch cameras, and suspicion, a police cruiser slowed behind him. Then another. Blue and red lights lit the sidewalk like a nightclub. The hum of engines faded into the tense click of opening doors. 2 officers stepped out. And everything changed. Hands where I can see them. Now. Darnell froze. The voice was deep, sharp, and familiar. Officer Travis Landry, a stocky white man known in the area for his zero-tolerance attitude and a history of overreaching stops. Behind him stood Officer Ethan Myers, younger, quieter, but just as rigid. "Don't move," Landry barked, stepping closer with one hand on his holster. Darnell's pulse raced. His phone slipped from his hoodie pocket and clattered on the sidewalk. He raised both hands instantly. "What did I do?" Landry didn't answer. Instead, he circled him like a vulture. "You match the description of a suspect in a break-in earlier tonight," Myers said, flipping open a notepad. "What break-in?" Darnell asked, heart pounding. "A reported burglary near Maple Row," Landry said. "Black male. Hooded sweatshirt. Possibly armed." That's half the city," Darnell said, trying to steady his voice. "I just got off work. Ask Big Floyd. I've been washing dishes for the last 6 hours. Turn around." "Sir, please." "I said turn around." With a firm shove, Darnell was spun against the cruiser. His wrists were twisted behind his back, cold steel snapping shut. His cheek pressed against the hood. He could hear the sizzle of the still-warm engine. It hissed like judgment. A passing car slowed. A woman stared from behind the wheel, then sped off. Nobody helped. No one filmed. No one asked questions. The search that found nothing. They patted him down roughly. Emptied his backpack. Unzipped his hoodie. All they found were work gloves, his name tag, a bus pass, and half a sandwich wrapped in foil. Still, Landry looked pleased, as if finding nothing was evidence in itself. "We'll sort it out at the station," he said, like a man doing the world a favor. "I didn't do anything," Darnell whispered. "You wore the wrong thing in the wrong place," Myers muttered. They shoved him into the back of the cruiser. The radio buzzed with codes and chatter. The inside of the car smelled like old leather in fear. Darnell's hands trembled. He pressed his forehead against the cage between him and the front seat. The night outside continued like he didn't exist. No Miranda. No explanation. Just silence. He wasn't read his rights. He wasn't told what he was being charged with. When he asked to call his mother, Landry laughed. "You can make your call when we're done figuring out who you really are." "But I got ID. In my back pocket." They ignored him. Instead, they drove him 18 minutes across town to the Midland County Police substation, where he was processed like a repeat offender, fingerprints, mugshot, stripped of his belongings, thrown into a holding cell with 2 flickering fluorescent lights and 1 broken toilet. No phone call came. No lawyer. Just 6 hours of concrete silence, interrupted only by the buzzing lock on the cell door when detectives entered. The interrogation room. 3:43 a.m. A steel table. A blinking red camera in the corner. Darnell sat alone, hands cuffed to the table, eyes sunken from exhaustion. Detective Rhonda Kilpatrick walked in, no smile, no greeting. She dropped a manila folder on the table with a slap. "Your prints came back clean," she said. But that doesn't mean you're not involved. Involved in what? Darnell asked, his voice hoarse. She opened the folder, revealing blurry black and white images, grainy screenshots from a home surveillance system. A hooded figure walked up a driveway. Nothing clear. No face. No timestamp. This was taken an hour before we picked you up, she said. That you? I don't know who that is, but it ain't me, he replied. You sure about that? I was at work. She didn't seem to care. She slid a legal pad in front of him. You want to write a statement? Now's your chance to help yourself. Darnell leaned back. I got nothing to write. She stared him down, then stood and walked out without another word. The cell again. The time drags. Darnell spent the rest of the night in the cell. Morning arrived like an insult, daylight pouring in through a narrow, grimy window. He hadn't slept. Hadn't eaten. No one told him what was going to happen next. By noon, a new officer handed him a cheese sandwich and a carton of milk. Dry. Warm. He ate it anyway. At 3:12 p.m., a guard told him his public defender was on her way. Her name was Marissa Quinn, a thin, red-haired woman in her early 30s with tired eyes and a clipboard full of disappointment. They're calling it probable cause, she told him through the bars. What does that even mean? It means they had just enough of an excuse to arrest you, and now we have to prove it wasn't enough. She sighed. We'll argue for release tomorrow. Maybe they'll let you out on bail. They didn't even tell me what I'm being charged with. Attempted burglary, she said quietly. And resisting. Darnell laughed. Not because it was funny. But because it was terrifying. His mother finds out too late. It wasn't until the next evening that Veronica Whitaker, Darnell's mother, found out. She'd filed a missing persons report that morning after he didn't come home. A social worker called her. He's being held at Midland County Jail. She dropped the phone. Veronica was a nurse. A single mother. She'd raised Darnell to stay out of trouble, to work hard, to never talk back when confronted. She taught him how to survive. But none of that mattered. Not when a hoodie could turn her son into a suspect. The courtroom smelled of pine-scented floor polish and old doubt. Every creak of the pew-like benches, every cough from the gallery, every click of a pen echoed louder than it should have. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a soft but constant flicker, like judgment hovering in the air. It was Monday, 9:32 a.m., and State of Georgia versus Darnell Whitaker had just been called into session at the Midland County Courthouse, courtroom 3B. And Darnell? He sat in a second-hand suit 3 sizes too big, handcuffed to the chair, feeling like a museum exhibit more than a human being. The gallery, full of faces, but none for him. The gallery was filled with white faces. Business suits, pearl earrings, sharp jaws, and sharper eyes. Most of them weren't even connected to the case, clerks, interns, locals who wandered in because court was free entertainment. But not one of them looked at Darnell with curiosity. Only contempt. The kind you reserve for someone already guilty. The kind that doesn't ask questions. Seated on the right, the 2 arresting officers, Officer Landry sat back with arms folded, chewing gum like it was his courtroom. Officer Myers tapped his pen against a yellow notepad, calm and detached. At the prosecution's table sat ADA Carl Blevins, a seasoned assistant district attorney with a reputation for being merciless in open court. Tall, sharp-featured, and with an unrelenting tone, Blevins had sent dozens of young black men to prison with closing arguments that sounded like war cries. And the judge? Judge Helen Garrison. A 60-year-old black woman with a steel stare and gray cornrows pinned into a bun. She had the reputation of being fair, firm, and impossible to manipulate, which is why so many attorneys in Midland tried to avoid her courtroom. But Blevins hadn't expected Darnell's file to land here. He'd hoped for someone easier. Opening statements, 2 realities collide. Prosecutor Blevins approached the jury, 8 white, 3 black, 1 Latino, with a cold smile. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, pacing slowly. On the night of October 5, 2024, a man was seen attempting to break into a private residence in a peaceful residential neighborhood. That man was wearing a hoodie. That man was caught by police shortly after. That man is seated right there. He pointed without shame, eyes hard on Darnell. This is not a story about race. It's a story about choices. And the defendant made the wrong ones. When it was her turn, Marissa Quinn, Darnell's overworked public defender, rose and approached the jury. This case is built on fear, she said slowly. Fear of the unknown. Fear of a black teenager walking alone in a white neighborhood. She took a breath. My client, Mr. Whitaker, had just finished a full shift washing dishes at Big Floyd's barbecue. We have time cards, witness statements, and security camera footage from the diner. He wasn't near the home on Maple Row. He had no weapons. No tools. No stolen property. No prior arrests. No record. She paused, scanning the jury. Yet here he sits, because he looked like someone who might have done something. The evidence, paper thin but still dangerous. First, Blevins presented the surveillance footage, the same blurry image Darnell had seen in interrogation. The hooded figure was grainy, the face obscured by shadows, the posture generic. Clearly resembles the defendant, Blevins said confidently. The jury nodded, but Judge Garrison raised an eyebrow. ADA Blevins, she said, her voice cool, has facial recognition been conducted? No, Your Honor. Then let's be clear with this jury, the image is unconfirmed and unverified. That was the first time Darnell's shoulders relaxed, even if just an inch. Next came the 911 call. A woman named Karen Ellington, a resident of Maple Row, called in. There's a black male outside. Hoodie on. He's walking real slow past the houses. Looks suspicious. I don't know if he's casing the neighborhood, but it just doesn't feel right. The audio felt like acid in Darnell's ears. Marissa stood. Objection, hearsay and racial profiling. Sustained, Judge Garrison replied instantly. The jury will disregard any reference to race in the caller's statement. But the damage was done. The words were already embedded in the room like invisible ink. Cross-examination, Marissa fights back. When Officer Landry took the stand, he was all swagger. Clean uniform. Proud posture. He looked like a man who'd won this game before. Officer Landry, Marissa began, you arrested my client because he matched a description? Yes. And what was that description? Black male. Wearing a gray hoodie. Between 5 feet 8 inches and 6 feet. That describes, what, half the high school football team. Snickers from the gallery. Landry shifted. He was walking near the scene. Acting suspicious. Suspicious how? He was looking around a lot. Looking around. While walking? Yes. She stepped closer. Is that illegal? He hesitated. No, ma'am. But it's often indicative of guilty behavior. Did you know at the time that Mr. Whitaker was coming home from work? No. Did you check with his place of employment before arresting him? No. Did he resist arrest? He hesitated. Questioned our authority. Did he run? No. Did he touch you? No. So your report says resisting because he asked why he was being arrested? Silence. Judge Garrison raised an eyebrow. Landry's jaw tightened. Correct. The courtroom reacts. The jury murmured. Even a few in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. Marissa seized the moment. So, Officer Landry, if I understand this correctly, my client was arrested for walking, looking around, and asking questions. Objection, Blevins snapped. Argumentative. Sustained, said the judge. But the point is noted. A break in the ice. After lunch, the judge requested both attorneys to approach the bench. Her voice was low, firm. You're walking a dangerous line, Mr. Blevins. This is not 1955 Mississippi. You're going to need more than a blurry photo and a neighbor's fear to convince this court. Marissa turned, and for the first time since the trial began, she smiled, just a flicker. She turned to Darnell and whispered, "We've got a chance." The end of day 1. Court adjourned at 4:47 p.m. Darnell was escorted back to holding, chains clinking like echoes of an era this country claims to have left behind. He sat alone in the cell, staring at the wall. But something was different now. Someone had heard him. The judge hadn't looked through him like glass. And for the first time since that October night, Darnell felt something stirred deep inside. Hope. The second day of trial began with thunder rolling through the gray Georgia sky. Rain hadn't started yet, but the air was thick, too warm, too heavy. Like the world was holding its breath. Darnell sat in silence, his wrists free of cuffs this time, but his legs still bounced beneath the defense table. He hadn't slept. Not really. Just closed his eyes and counted bricks in the cell wall, listening to the buzzing of a flickering light all night. Marissa Quinn leaned in as Judge Garrison entered. "You ready, D?" she whispered. "As I'll ever be," he said, though the words felt dry in his throat. Today, the prosecution would call its most anticipated witness, Karen Ellington, the woman who'd made the original 911 call, the woman whose fear had started all of this. And Darnell was about to come face to face with her. Witness number 4, Karen Ellington, the woman behind the voice. Karen was in her mid-50s. Neat blonde bob, pastel cardigan, and a gold necklace with a tiny cross. She stepped into the witness box like it was a PTA meeting, not a felony trial. Her hands trembled slightly as she was sworn in, but her voice was calm, too calm. Blevins approached like a man stepping into home court. "Mrs. Ellington, do you recall the evening of October 5th? "I do." "And where were you at approximately 9:10 p.m. that night?" "In my living room. Watching The Voice with my husband." "And what did you see that prompted your 911 call?" "There was a figure. A man. Outside. He was pacing back and forth. Hoodie up. It made me nervous." "Why?" Karen hesitated. Because people don't normally do that on our street. It's a family area." Blevins nodded. "And had you seen this person before?" "No." "Could you see his face?" "Not clearly, but I could tell he was, well, African American." Blevins turned, satisfied. No further questions. But Marissa Quinn rose like a slow storm. "Mrs. Ellington," she began, flipping through a legal pad, "you said the man outside was wearing a hoodie?" "Yes." "And it was nighttime?" "Yes." "No streetlights on that side of the road?" "That's right." "Did you ever go outside? Call out? Ask him what he was doing?" "No." "So, your only interaction with this individual was through a window, in the dark, during a television commercial break?" Karen stiffened. "Yes." "Yet you told the 911 dispatcher that he was acting suspicious." "What did that mean, exactly?" "He was walking slowly. Looking around." "Did you see him attempt to enter a house?" "No." "Did you see him carry a weapon? Or anything dangerous?" "No." "Did he ever look in your direction?" She hesitated. "No." "Did you see him commit a crime?" "No," Karen admitted. Her voice was smaller now. Marissa paused, then delivered the blow. "Mrs. Ellington, would you have called 911 if the man walking outside had been white?" The courtroom fell silent. Even Blevins flinched. I don't know," Karen whispered. "The jury reacts." That one moment fractured something in the courtroom. The white jurors didn't nod like before. The Latino man furrowed his brow. One of the black women on the jury folded her arms tightly and leaned back. The cracks were beginning to show. But Blevins wasn't done. He had one last card to play. Prosecution's surprise witness, Officer Jared Slater. Unannounced. Unexpected. Officer Slater had been Landry's training partner before transferring precincts. He wasn't listed in discovery. But Judge Garrison allowed it, barely. "State, you better have a reason for this," she warned. Slater walked in with perfect posture, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. Blevins leaned into the drama. "Officer Slater, you responded to the Maple Row area that night?" "Yes." "What did you see when you arrived?" "I saw 2 officers already detaining a suspect. Young black male. Gray hoodie. Hands behind his back." "Did the suspect say anything?" "He asked why he was being arrested." "Did you find that threatening?" "No. Just confused." Blevins blinked. "You didn't?" "No, sir." A pause. The jury straightened up. "Did he resist?" "No." Blevins turned red. "Why are you here today, Officer Slater?" Slater looked directly at the judge. "Because my original statement was altered in the final report. My body cam footage was disabled by accident that night. But I was there. I saw everything. And this young man didn't do anything wrong." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Blevins froze. The gallery erupted in whispers. Judge Garrison reacts. "Order. I will have order." Garrison slammed her gavel 3 times. Mr. Blevins approached the bench. "Now." The whispers stopped. At the bench, Garrison hissed under her breath. "You submitted altered testimony?" I wasn't aware, Your Honor. Landry gave me the report." "I assumed." "You assumed facts in a felony trial? You presented surveillance as confirmed ID? You withheld a first-hand witness? I ought to hold you in contempt." Blevins turned pale. A twist, the defense rests early. Marissa didn't need more. After Officer Slater's testimony, after Karen Ellington's collapse, after the jury had witnessed firsthand how thin the state's case truly was, she stood and said, "Your Honor, the defense rests." Garrison nodded. "Jury will reconvene tomorrow morning for closing arguments." Darnell's heart thudded like a drumline. He couldn't believe what he'd just heard. A white cop, had told the truth. And that truth might be enough. In the holding room, Darnell finally speaks. Back in the concrete holding cell, Marissa met with Darnell. "You did good," she said softly. "I didn't do anything," he murmured. "You stayed calm. You didn't snap. That matters." "But why did he tell the truth?" "That Slater guy? Why now?" Marissa shrugged. "Maybe he couldn't sleep anymore." Darnell leaned back against the wall. "I just want to go home." She didn't have an answer for that. Morning in Fulton County Courthouse arrived heavy with tension. Gray skies loomed low over Atlanta, and the slow drizzle painted the courtroom windows like silent tears. Inside, every seat in the gallery was filled. Reporters. Activists. Locals who'd heard the buzz. Even 2 college students from Georgia State sat in the back row, notebooks open. Today, Darnell's fate would be decided. He sat still, hands in his lap, dressed in a borrowed navy blazer and black slacks. His mother was in the front row, silent, holding her cross like it was the only thing holding her together. Judge Garrison entered. "Bring in the jury," she said. 12 strangers filed in, 6 white, 3 black, 2 Latino, 1 Asian American. None of them looked at Darnell. That, Marissa had told him, was a bad sign. Or maybe a good one. No one ever really knew. Closing arguments, 2 sides of one story. Prosecutor James Blevins stood first. He adjusted his tie, stepped into the center of the courtroom, and spoke with fire, but it was forced, like a man trying to light wet matches. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "this isn't about race. This is about public safety." He walked past the jury, gesturing toward Karen Ellington, who sat stone-faced. When someone calls 911 because they feel unsafe, it's our duty to respond. When officers see behavior that raises suspicion, they act. And in this case, they acted lawfully, reasonably, and responsibly. He raised a copy of the surveillance still. This man was at the scene. He matched the description. He resisted questioning. Objection. Sustained, said Garrison. Blevins stumbled, then recovered. All we ask is that you trust our law enforcement. Believe in their instincts. Because if we don't, what kind of message are we sending to our communities? He turned toward Darnell. He was there. He acted suspiciously. That's not profiling, that's policing. He returned to his table. His jaw tight. Then came Marissa Quinn. She didn't walk. She stood still, both hands on the wooden rail between her and the jury. Her voice was soft, almost like she was telling a story to a room of children. Have you ever been followed in a store, just because of how you look? She began. Have you ever had someone lock their car when you walked by, though you did nothing but smile? Have you ever had your very presence labeled as a threat, your skin color treated like probable cause? She turned to Darnell, then back to the jury. Darnell Hayes is a college student. A part-time warehouse worker. He has no criminal record. No history of violence. No evidence connects him to any crime. The only thing that connects him to that street on that night is the fact that he was black. She paused. You heard Karen Ellington admit it. You saw Officer Slater risk his career to tell the truth. And yet, the prosecution wants you to believe this is about instinct. Let's be clear, this is about assumption. And assumption isn't justice. She let silence fill the room. Your verdict today sends a message. Not just to Darnell, but to every young black man in this country who walks to a corner store, who waits outside a friend's house, who dares to exist. She turned back to her seat. I trust you'll do what's right. The jury deliberates. As the jury left, Darnell felt the walls close in. Minutes dragged. Then hours. The judge granted a lunch recess, and still, no verdict. Darnell sat in a small holding room with stale coffee and a broken clock. The silence was cruel. He stared at the floor. Counted tile cracks. Imagined freedom. Then imagined prison. Would they believe Marissa? Would they believe the truth? Inside the jury room, 12 strangers sat around a rectangular oak table. The forewoman, a black woman in her 40s named Alicia Monroe, looked around. Let's talk, she said. Juror number 2, a white man named Greg, spoke first. I just don't get it. If the cops say he was acting suspicious, that should mean something, right? But Slater said he wasn't, Alicia replied. Slater was one guy. Landry and Chalmers saw what they saw. Juror number 6, a Latino woman named Clara, raised her hand. But did they really? Their body cams were off. Why would that happen? Coincidence? Juror number 7, a young Asian American man named Jonah, pulled out his notes. There was no weapon. No stolen goods. Not even a broken mailbox. Just a hoodie and a nervous neighbor. The room split. Half leaned toward guilty, hesitant, unsure, but leaning. Half were dead set on acquittal. Then someone said it. If this was a white guy in khakis and a baseball cap, would we even be here? Silence. A mother's waiting room. Outside, Darnell's mom, Tamara, sat with her sister. He didn't do anything, she kept whispering. He didn't do anything. I know, baby. I know. A woman in the back row, a stranger, reached forward and squeezed Tamara's hand. The courtroom wasn't divided by blood anymore. It was divided by belief. The verdict comes in. 4 hours and 12 minutes later, the jury returned. Judge Garrison raised an eyebrow. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. Darnell's heart nearly exploded. He stood, hands trembling. The clerk took the envelope, opened it, and read. In the case of the state of Georgia versus Darnell Hayes. A pause. We, the jury, find the defendant. Another pause. Not guilty on all counts. Gasps. Applause. Tears. Tamara fell into her sister's arms, sobbing. Marissa smiled, not smugly, just with relief. Darnell sat down before his legs gave out. He couldn't speak. Couldn't move. He was free. But freedom doesn't erase what happened. As the judge dismissed the jury, as the crowd filtered out, as Darnell stepped into the Atlanta air as a free man once more, one thought echoed in his head. They could have ruined my life, just because of how I look. And though the trial was over, the fight for dignity, for truth, for justice, was just beginning. 3 days after the trial, Darnell Hayes woke up to the sound of a car horn outside his apartment in South Riverdale, Atlanta. It was persistent, short, sharp bursts, not the lazy honks of an impatient neighbor. He moved the blinds. It was a white sedan with tinted windows. It had been parked across the street since the night of the verdict. He didn't recognize it. His phone buzzed again. Another anonymous voicemail. The 12th that morning. Go back where you came from, boy. Then another. You might have fooled that liberal judge, but we ain't forgetting what you look like. Darnell deleted it without listening to the rest. The country reacts. By Monday morning, the trial had become national news. CNN aired segments titled Justice or Sympathy, while Fox ran a panel debate called Was This Another Woke Verdict? Clips of Marissa's closing arguments went viral on TikTok. Activists flooded Twitter, defending Darnell. Hashtag Free Darnell turned into hashtag He Was Always Free. But not everyone celebrated. Some said the jury had been bullied by race-baiting lawyers. Others blamed the judge. Protesters gathered in front of Fulton County Courthouse, some with signs calling for Darnell's retrial. A billboard in Cobb County read, If we can't trust the law to protect us from criminals, who will? Under it, a photoshopped image of Darnell in a hoodie. Life doesn't resume like nothing happened. Darnell tried to go back to work. On his first day back at the shipping warehouse in Hapeville, his manager pulled him into the office. Look, man, the guy said, not meeting his eyes, there's been a lot of press. Some folks are uncomfortable. Maybe you could take a few more weeks off? I didn't do anything wrong, Darnell replied. I know. But it's disruptive. Translation, you make white people nervous now. Darnell didn't argue. He just walked out. That night, someone spray-painted thug on the back wall of his apartment building. Interview offers, book deals, but Marissa called him the next morning. CNN wants to do a sit-down, she said. Prime time. Just you. No filters. Full hour. I'm not sure, Darnell said. I don't want to be a face. You already are. He paused. What if I just want to disappear? Then they win, she said quietly. Meeting the man who saved him. 2 weeks later, Darnell asked to meet Officer Slater. They met at a quiet diner near Lakewood Heights. Slater looked tired, thinner, grayer. He'd taken early retirement. Internal Affairs had opened an investigation into his conduct. Some cops called him a traitor. You didn't have to do what you did, Darnell told him over eggs and toast. Slater shook his head. Yes, I did. Why? Slater sipped his coffee. Because silence is complicity. And I'd been silent too long. You were a kid in a hoodie, not a criminal. But I'd been trained, programmed to see danger in that. That night, I saw my own son in your eyes. That's what changed it for me. They didn't speak for a moment. Then Slater said, Truth is, most days I wonder if it was worth it. It was, Darnell said. The letter that changed everything. 1 month later, a letter arrived at Darnell's door. No return address. Inside, a simple handwritten note. I'm sorry. I was the one who called 911. I didn't know you. I was scared. And maybe that fear wasn't about anything you did. Maybe it was just what you looked like. I'm trying to unlearn that now. I hope you can forgive me. Karen Ellington. Darnell read it 3 times. He didn't know what forgiveness looked like yet. But something in him let go. Not everything. Just a little. Speaking out or stepping away? Marissa invited him to speak at Morehouse College. He stood in front of 200 students and told his story. Not just about the trial, but about the waiting. The fear. The way justice almost failed. He spoke in Birmingham. Then in Charlotte. Then at a conference in D.C. And every time, someone approached him afterward. A mother. A teenager. A young man who'd just beaten a petty charge for loitering. You gave me hope, they said. But it was heavy. The expectation. The attention. The decision, leave or lead? 6 months after the verdict, Darnell sat in his small apartment and stared at a blank page. He'd been offered a memoir deal. 6 figures. Nationwide tour. But part of him wanted to vanish. Maybe move to Seattle. Or Phoenix. Somewhere where his name didn't precede him. Somewhere he could breathe. But then he remembered Alicia Monroe, the jury forewoman, and what she said when she shook his hand on verdict day. Don't let them make you a ghost, Darnell. Be louder than the lie. And he realized something. He didn't survive this just for himself. Final scene, the march. On the anniversary of his arrest, Darnell led a march through downtown Atlanta. It wasn't massive. A few hundred people. But they walked in silence past the courthouse, past the police precinct, past the spot where he was thrown to the ground. He wore a hoodie. And on the back, in bold white letters, it read, I was walking home. People stopped. Watched. Some joined. Some didn't. But Darnell didn't look back. He didn't walk for revenge. He walked for visibility. For dignity. For every kid who looked like him and wondered if justice would see them as human.